Millionaire shocked when girl's unexpected request from male beggar for the party. The night was thick with the kind of tension that sticks to your skin, the humid Miami air pressing down like a heavy blanket. At the edge of the glimmering gala, where millionaires mingled and laughed under crystal chandeliers, something caught everyone off guard. A scruffy man, barely more than a whisper of a presence in his tattered jacket and worn shoes, stepped forward with a request so strange it stopped the room cold. He was no ordinary beggar. There was a strange intensity in his eyes, sharp and wild, like someone carrying a storm inside. And then came the girl, the one everyone expected to ignore him. Instead, she stunned the crowd. "Can he come to the party?" she said, voice steady but low, like she was asking for something precious and dangerous all at once. Whispers erupted instantly. "Who does she think he is?" The millionaire stiffened, eyes darting between the ragged figure and why would a girl from a wealthy family suddenly dare bring a beggar into their rarefied world? And why was the man so calm, so certain, as if this invitation was a long-awaited secret? The staff froze. Glasses hovered mid-air. Conversations died down to hushed gasps. Then, just as quickly as the tension built, the man turned away. His shoes scraped the polished marble like a bitter echo, but the girl called out softly, "Diego, wait." And something in her voice cracked, a mix of hope and fear, like the night itself was holding its breath. Everyone watched, trapped in the pulse of the moment. Who was Diego Miller? Why had a girl nobody knew risked so much for him? And what shadows was he running from, that the sight of his ragged clothes made a hush fall over a room built on wealth and secrets? Outside, the city lights flickered, as if signaling that this was just the start of something no one dared fully understand. Behind those tired eyes was a story tangled with loss, wispies, but fate had other plans. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss out on any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Rachel stepped forward, heart racing, eyes locked on Diego. The murmurs swirled around her like in a storm. "Can he come?" she repeated, louder now, defiance igniting her voice. Silence hung like a heavy shroud, disbelief etched on every face. Suddenly, the gala doors swung open. A rush of cold air swept in, carrying biting scents of rain-soaked asphalt and city life. Everyone turned, startled, as a tall figure entered. The man wore a dark suit that seemed polished enough to shine amidst the opulence, but his eyes held something darker, more menacing. "Rachel," he called out, voice low and unyielding. "You shouldn't do this." It was her father, Charles Carson, the towering titan of the tech industry. Tension broke like a glass shattering against the floor. He strutted towards her, commanding attention. Gasps erupted, whispers rippled, and the crowd recoiled from the intensity of the moment. Rachel felt the room constrict. Her chest tightened. Panic clawed at her. "Dad, please." She wanted to explain, to offer solace, but her voice wavered. Lost in the clamor of disbelief, the millionaires watched like hawks, waiting for chaos to break loose. "Do you even know who he is?" Charles sneered, pointing at Diego. "You're risking everything for and I can't believe I'm saying this, a beggar?" The word lingered in the air, sharp and cruel, a punch to her gut. Rage boiled in Rachel. "It's not like that." Her voice trembled, but she wouldn't back down. "He's more than that." But the shock on the guests' faces told her everything. She looked at Diego. He had gone pale, eyes flickering with memories she couldn't fathom. It was like she could see the walls he had built around himself crack under the pressure of her father's disdain. "Rachel," he started, but she cut him off. "No, Diego, let me handle this," she insisted, turning back to her father. "You don't know him like I do. He deserves better than this treatment." Charles frowned deeply, the lines on his forehead deepening like cuts on an old map. "You're being naive." His voice turned sharp. "There are consequences. You're too young to understand what comes from mixing with people like him." Something inside Rachel snapped. "People like him? What does that even mean?" Fury rushed to her head. She felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. "He has a name, a past. At least he's out here living, instead of hidden away in a glass tower like you." Suddenly, the lights flickered, cutting through the rising tension. A deafening crash echoed, followed by the scream of shattering glass. A window behind them exploded into a rain of crystals. A flash of movement darted across the darkened ballroom, shadows dancing wildly. Gasps erupted, hearts stopped, then chaos. People screamed, some fell to the ground. Amidst the panic, a figure in black rushed toward Rachel, eyes wide with intention. "Get down," Diego shouted, pushing Rachel to the ground, just as loud pops echoed through the room. Gunshots. Sparks of fear lit her down to her bones. Rachel's breath came in quick, sharp bursts. She looked at Diego, his face haunted, protective. The crowd scattered, chaos unfurling like a dark flower. In that moment, everything changed. Shadows of Diego's past surged forward. No longer just a beggar. Something deeper, something terrifying lay beneath the surface. She could feel it. "What do you know?" Rachel gasped, clutching his arm. "Who are you really?" But before he could answer, the figure in black darted closer, death dripping from its intent. The answer died on Diego's lips. Time stalled, everyone held their breath, and the world spun into an uncertain gloom. The truth was coming, ready to obliterate everything they thought they knew, and they were all trapped in the eye of the storm. Rachel's heart pounded like a drum against her ribcage. Time seemed to stretch, an unyielding tension cracking the air. Diego's fierce gaze darted around, tracking the shadow closing in. "Get down!" he shouted again, his voice a raw growl as glass shards rained around them, glittering like deadly stars. Bullets echoed, ricocheting off the walls, each sound slicing through the chaos. Panic erupted, chaos spiraling out of control. She pressed herself against the floor, her breaths coming fast and shallow. Fear wrapped around her throat. The partygoers screamed, some sliding beneath tables, others scrambling for the exits. The lights flickered, casting eerie, dancing shadows across panicked faces, a blurred mix of terror and disbelief. Diego shielded her, his body tense, poised between her and the approaching threat. Rachel glanced up. In the dark, everything was a blur, but shadows were moving, relentless and determined. "Stay close," he urged, his voice straining over the chaos. Her hand shook as she gripped his arm, grounding herself in the reality that this wasn't just some random act. Diego knew something. Something deep, something she'd yet to understand. Then, as if conjured from the very shadows, a figure lunged closer. Clad in black, with a mask obscuring their face, the intruder stretched out a hand. In that instant, Diego's expression hardened, an unseen resolve flickering in his eyes. Suddenly, he shoved Rachel to the side. "Run!" he shouted, blocking her path. "Diego, no!" But his frame was a wall, and he surged forward, ready to confront whatever danger was charging at them. In the tumult of heartbeats and muffled screams, Rachel's world narrowed to the figure moving towards Diego. Then, with a shocking twist of fate, the black-clad assailant jerked to a halt, not advancing, but frozen in place, as if caught by an unseen chain. Diego's weighty silence enveloped the space. The scattered crowd fell quiet. Rachel's pulse raced as the masked figure slowly removed their disguise, peeling the black fabric away to reveal Brody. Rachel gasped, confusion piercing through. "What are you doing? Why?" The man standing before them was no stranger. Brody Lane, her father's fierce right hand, the one who had stood in board meetings with that same unshakable confidence. But now, fear clawed at his throat and his eyes brimmed with something she had never seen. Guilt. "Rachel, he began, voice cracking. "I didn't mean for it to come to this. You don't understand." Suddenly, it all crashed down around her. "This was planned?" she managed, disbelief blotting out the roar of panic. "You set this up?" Brody didn't reply, expression darkening, his mouth a thin line. As if sensing the shift, anger surged in Diego's stance. "You have no idea what you're getting into, Brody." Rachel felt the ground shift beneath her. "What is this? What are you hiding?" Panic coiled tight around her chest. Brody's gaze flickered away, haunted. "I thought I could protect you, from him, from it all. Rachel, the company, our family. It's all been a front, for years." Words dropped like stones. "A front?" she repeated, pulse pounding. "What does that mean?" Suddenly, a bright flash of light cut through the gloom. Blaring sirens echoed in the distance. The adrenaline surged again. "Listen to me," Brody demanded, eyes frantic. "This is bigger than you know. But before he could finish, another figure emerged from the crowd. Her father, Charles Carson. His eyes were dark, swirling with a storm she had never seen before. "Enough!" he roared, shoving past the chaos with a fierce determination. As the lights flickered once more, illuminating the scene, Rachel's heart rocked. "Dad, what are you doing?" And then Brody, in a desperate burst of truth, blurted, "The accident, Rachel! It wasn't an accident! I knew!" Everything stopped. A hush fell across the crowd. They all turned, locked in the gravity of a revelation that no one was prepared for. What accident? Who was really in danger? The truth twisted deeper, darker than she could bear. Rachel caught Diego's eye. His fear mirrored her own. Each piece dragged the weight of a truth that could fracture everything she thought she knew. And outside, amidst the chaos, sirens wailed a warning, heralding the arrival of answers, or worse, a reckoning that spun deeper into shadows. Rachel felt the weight hanging in the air like a thick fog, her mind racing to make sense of Brody's revelation. The accident. It wasn't an accident? Her words trembled as the meaning settled like a stone in her stomach. Diego stood beside her, fists clenched, brows knitted with tension. She could feel his anger radiating off him. In the chaos of the ballroom, tension tightened much like a noose. Guests whispered in frantic disbelief, their eyes darting between Charles, Diego, and Brody. Murmurings filled the room, thickening the air with suspicion and fear. "Shut this down!" Charles shouted, taking another step forward, his authority desperate and overpowering. "Rachel, listen to me. We don't need to dig up more dirt. The board won't stand for it." "More dirt?" Rachel's voice rose, fueled by frustration. "Dad, do you even hear yourself? People died." Brody looked shaken, but his face was pale under a layer of sweat. "You don't know what they'll do to protect the truth," he said, glancing around, as if the walls themselves had ears. Suddenly, amidst the chaos, the flickering lights overhead exploded, showering the room in eerie darkness. Panic surged anew as guests screamed, diving beneath tables. A low hum of chaos crept in, drowning out reason as the world turned dark. Just then, a loud crashing sound came from the entrance. A figure stumbled in, eyes wide, hair a wild cascade, breathing hard. It was Mia, Rachel's younger sister, breathless and wild-eyed. "What's happening?" she cried out, shaking. Her youthful voice cracked, slicing through the tumult. "I heard gunshots. I couldn't find you." "Get back," Charles shouted, arms throwing themselves out instinctively as if to shield her. "Stay close to me," Rachel said, moving closer to her sister, who was clearly terrified. Suddenly, everything felt more fragile, as if a breath could shatter their world completely. But before Rachel could comfort her, a piercing scream cut through the air, freezing everyone in place. A body flew from the crowd, landing with a thud on the polished floor. A man in a black suit, blood seeping from a gash on his forehead. The inky red was stark against the marble, creating a grotesque picture in the chaos. Rachel's heart jolted. "What just happened?" she gasped, freezing at the sight. Diego's breath was rapid beside her, the protective instinct in his eyes sharpening. "This is all wrong!" Brody shouted, looking about as if searching for clarity, but chaos roared around him. Just then he stumbled back, tripping over his words as fear seeped into his features. And in an unexpected moment, Brody pointed an accusing finger at Diego. "You did this." The accusation was a thunderclap, drawing gasps from the crowd. Everyone turned, eyes widening, confusion morphing into visible suspicion. "No," Diego blurted, eyes flashing with fury. "Stop! You're out of your mind." But the words hung heavy. Rachel felt the ground shift beneath her. Light glinted off something sharp that fell from Brody's pocket, skidding toward Rachel's feet. A small device, metallic and ominous. "What is that?" she whispered, bending down, her heart racing. Brody's expression darkened, rage and desperation clashing as he lunged towards her. "Don't!" he cried out, but it was too late. She picked it up, her fingers brushing against something more than cold metal. It was a recording device, a spy cam. Suddenly, pieces clicked in her mind like a jigsaw puzzle falling into place. "You set this up, didn't you? You were spying on us." The urgency sent tremors through the crowd as revelations crackled in the air. "Everyone's lives have been a game to you," she accused, her voice shaky but fierce. And just then, something more astounding happened. The crowd began to part. A group of professionals in sleek suits and earpieces slicked in, faces hard and cold, as if stepping off a movie set. The air thickened with tension, eyes wide as they reached the center where chaos lingered. "Clear the area," one of them barked, moving with practiced authority. "We're securing the premises." Rachel's heart raced. What did this mean? Whispers of panic grew. "Mom, where's Mom?" she thought, searching for her presence amid the confusion. But her thoughts faded as the professionals closed in, surrounding Diego and Brody, their intentions darkening the room like a looming storm. As they grasped Diego, holding him tightly like a criminal, the weight of betrayal seeped deep into her chest. The world spun around, mirroring the chaos of her heart. "Diego!" she screamed, reaching out, desperation clawing at her throat. "What's happening?" Diego's eyes locked onto hers, a tumult of emotions swirling like a tempest. "It's not what you think, Rachel," he shouted through the storm of voices, desperation etched in his voice, vulnerability cracking through the surface. Her heart sank further. Trust shattered. "But you, who are you really?" Just then, a tension-filled silence emerged, leaving Rachel suspended in uncertainty. And for the first time, everything she'd believed began to crumble, unraveling before her eyes like a tightly woven web, the truth lurking beneath darkness, threatening to consume them all. Rachel felt the weight hanging in the air like a thick fog, her mind racing to make sense of Brody's revelation. The accident? It wasn't an accident? Her words trembled as the meaning settled like a stone in her stomach. Diego stood beside her, fists clenched, brows knitted with tension. She could feel his anger radiating off him. In the chaos of the ballroom, tension tightened much like a noose. Guests whispered in frantic disbelief, their eyes darting between Charles, Diego, and Brody. Murmurings filled the room, thickening the air with suspicion and fear. "Shut this down," Charles shouted, taking another step forward, his authority desperate and overpowering. Rachel, listen to me. We don't need to dig up more dirt. The board won't stand for it. More dirt? Rachel's voice rose, fueled by frustration. Dad, do you even hear yourself? People died. Brody looked shaken, but his face was pale under a layer of sweat. You don't know what they'll do to protect the truth, he said, glancing around as if the walls themselves had ears. Suddenly, amidst the chaos, the flickering lights overhead exploded, showering the room in eerie darkness. Panic surged anew as guests screamed, diving beneath tables. A low hum of chaos crept in, drowning out reason as the world turned dark. Just then, a loud, crashing sound came from the entrance. A figure stumbled in, eyes wide, hair a wild cascade, breathing hard. It was Mia, Rachel's younger sister, breathless and wild-eyed. What's happening? She cried out, shaking. Her youthful voice cracked, slicing through the tumult. I heard gunshots. I couldn't find you. Get back, Charles shouted, arms throwing themselves out instinctively as if to shield her. Stay close to me, Rachel said, moving closer to her sister, who was clearly terrified. Suddenly, everything felt more fragile, as if a breath could shatter their world completely. But before Rachel could comfort her, a piercing scream cut through the air, freezing everyone in place. A body flew from the crowd, landing with a thud on the polished floor. A man in a black suit, blood seeping from a gash on his forehead. The inky red was stark against the marble, creating a grotesque picture in the chaos. Rachel's heart jolted. What just happened? She gasped, freezing at the sight. Diego's breath was rapid beside her, the protective instinct in his eyes sharpening. This is all wrong, Brody shouted, looking about as if searching for clarity, but chaos roared around him. Just then, he stumbled back, tripping over his words as fear seeped into his features. And in an unexpected moment, Brody pointed an accusing finger at Diego. You did this. The accusation was a thunderclap, drawing gasps from the crowd. Everyone turned, eyes widening, confusion morphing into. No, Diego blurted, eyes flashing with fury. Stop, you're out of your mind! But the words hung heavy. Rachel felt the ground schist beneath her. Light glinted off something sharp that fell from Brody's pocket, skidding toward Rachel's feet, a small device, metallic and ominous. What is that? She whispered, bending down, her heart racing. Brody's expression darkened, rage and desperation clashing as he lunged towards her. Don't! He cried out, but it was too late. She picked it up, her fingers brushing against something more than cold metal. It was a recording device, a spy cam. Suddenly, pieces clicked in her mind, like a jigsaw puzzle, falling into place. You set this up, didn't you? You were spying on us! The urgency sent tremors through the crowd as revelations crackled in the air. Everyone's lives have been a game to you, she accused, her voice shaky but fierce. And just then, something more astounding happened. The crowd began to part. A group of professionals in sleek suits and earpieces slipped in, faces hard and cold, as if stepping off a movie set. The air thickened with tension, eyes wide as they reached the center where chaos lingered. Clear the area, one of them barked, moving with practiced authority. We're securing the premises. Rachel's heart raced. What did this mean? Whispers of panic grew. Mom! Where's Mom? She thought, searching for her presence amid the confusion. But her thoughts faded as the professionals closed in, surrounding Diego and Brody, their intentions darkening the room like a looming storm. As they grasped Diego, holding him tightly like a criminal, the weight of betrayal seeped deep into her chest. The world spun around, mirroring the chaos of her heart. Diego! She screamed, reaching out, desperation clawing at her throat. What's happening? Diego's eyes locked onto hers, a tumult of emotions swirling like a tempest. It's not what you think, Rachel! He shouted through the storm of voices, desperation etched in his voice, vulnerability cracking through the surface. Rachel didn't even notice the figures from the back. They moved swiftly, a blur of excitement and fear, echoing throughout the chaos like a dark tide. Then came the booming voice that silenced them all. "Stop right there!" Everyone froze. The room swiveled towards the dark figure standing at the entrance, eyes blazing like fire, stance poised and powerful. "Clear the room!" the figure commanded again. "Now!" The crowd parted, an invisible tide washing away confusion as fear clutched their hearts. Rachel squinted, struggling to see through the shadows. The figure stepped into the light, momentum heavy, slow. She gasped, recognition flooding her. "Max!" she exclaimed, shock seizing her throat. It was her older brother, the golden child lost in shadows, a man she thought dead. "Rachel, move!" Max shouted, his voice shaking with urgency. The weight of the world pressed down on him. He wasn't here for a reunion. He was here for something dark. "She's in danger," he roared, eyes darting toward Diego as if promising both salvation and doom, revealing a connection that sent chills down her spine. "Danger?" Rachel's heart raced faster, pain ripping through her. "What do you mean? What's going on?" "Everything," Max said, his expression raw, solemn. "You have no idea, it's bigger than all of us." The words weighed heavily. Rachel's world tilted. The truths she thought she understood crumbled beneath her like brittle glass. "Max," she whispered, confusion mixing with dread. "Family secrets and betrayal." "The accident, Rachel. It was planned. We were all in danger." Suddenly, chaos erupted again. Red lights flashed, a cacophony of voices erupted, and the crowd turned as one. But Rachel was lost, spiraling into a whirlwind of questions. Family secrets? Betrayal? What had she stumbled into? Everything felt fragile, ready to shatter, and the mystery of who to trust hovered like a whisper in the ears of the crowd. "Max, wait!" she shouted. But the shadows deepened, swallowing the truth whole, leaving only questions. As Diego's grip on her hand tightened, everything shifted. Even relationships, identities, and loyalties twisted in ways she couldn't fathom. Beneath it all, a storm brewed, ready to break. And as the world slipped into chaos, Rachel could feel it, the weight of the truth looming, primed to crush everything she once knew. The night stretched on, shadows clinging to every corner of the extravagant ballroom. The air was thick with confusion, panic, and unspoken truths. Rachel stared at her brother, Max, trying to make sense of everything. Diego's hand tightened around hers, knuckles white, fear shadowing his face. "Rachel, please, you need to listen," Max said, urgency spilling from his words. "This is bigger than you think." Before Rachel could respond, the room shook with a deep, reverberating crash that came from the entrance. Everybody turned, searching for the source, breaths hitching in unison. A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd, confusion pulsing like a heartbeat. Then, a flash, a bright light erupted within the hall. It was blinding, illuminating the faces of terrified guests. Screams broke free, a cacophony of fear echoing through the chaos. Rachel squeezed Diego's hand harder. He looked at her, eyes wide, as if he could see the storm brewing inside her. "Max, what's happening?" she shouted over the noise, heart racing like a trapped bird. Then, the blinding light dimmed as a figure stumbled through the doorway, silhouetted. A cloak of darkness. The room drew a collective breath, silence crashing upon them. "Detective Lawrence!" someone shouted, recognition rippling through the crowd like a fresh breeze. Rachel's stomach twisted. Detective Lawrence, a name that sent waves of fear through all those familiar with the whispers of power and secrets buried deep within their world. Was he here for her? For Diego? For Brody? "Everyone stay back," the detective barked, voice cutting through the shock. He moved into the room, A storm wrapped in authority, eyes scanning the crowd. Rachel felt unease coil within her. The detective even looked at Diego, his gaze sharp, filled with intent. "You, come with me." "Wait," Max interjected, panic breaking his cool demeanor. "You can't take him." Before Rachel could process it, the detective stepped forward, a gun glinting at his hip, his voice low and full of warning. "You don't understand. This is for your protection." A laugh shattered the tension. It came from Brody, a sound filled with madness. "For her protection? Is that what you're telling yourself?" Then, a sudden crack. Another explosion of sound rang through the air. Someone rushed in from the shadows. A striking woman, her face covered by a mask and fear etched in her eyes. "Stop!" she screamed, hands raised. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Gasps echoed around the room, stepping back into a haze of uncertainty. "Who the hell are you?" Rachel shouted, feeling anger flare within her. The woman's voice quaked as she stammered. "You need to know. You don't understand what's at stake. The accident, it was me. But before she could finish, the lights flickered back on. In a flash of confusion, a figure behind the woman brandished a device, pointing it at her. "Enough of this. You'll ruin everything." Bang! A shot rang out, echoing through hearts and minds like thunder. Screams erupted once more, and chaos painted the walls with panic. Rachel's world fragmented into shards as the woman fell. Time slowed, crystallizing every moment, her impact crashing onto the polished floor. "No!" Rachel cried, her voice struggling against the weight of horror. The entire room froze. Everyone's eyes locked onto the lifeless body, then darted between each other, horror etched into their expressions. But it was the look on Diego's face that tore through Rachel's soul. "Diego," she breathed, recognizing the truth unraveling within him. He stepped closer to the body, heart racing, pulse drumming in his ears, something shifting within his eyes. The room felt electric. "Wait!" he shouted, realization dawning. "What did you mean it was you?" But before he could move, a cry broke through the frozen silence. A figure stepped onto the stage, face glowing with anticipation. "You thought you knew, didn't you?" The voice was chilling, and memories clawed up Rachel's spine. Her father, Charles. With a twisted grin, he stepped forward from the shadows. "This is the beginning of a game none of you are prepared to play." The gasp that followed was sharper than the shot, a gasp that resonated like a punch to the gut. What game? What had he done? Rachel's world tipped on its axis, leaving her hanging. No explanation, just heavy tension simmering like a kettle poised to boil over. Everything she thought she understood crumbled. Diego's secret, the accident, and now Charles. The web was tangled, lies and truths interweaving in chaos. And then, as if in answer to her pain, the lights flickered again. Another figure emerged from the now thick darkness, a shadow no one could ignore. Rachel felt her heart clench. "Not you too," she whispered. "Hello, Rachel," the figure said, voice silk and fire, sending chills racing down her spine. "I've come to finish what was started." And suddenly, uncertainty loomed larger than before, wrapping its icy fingers around her heart, leaving her desperate to know where the unraveling would lead her next. "Hello, Rachel," the figure said again, voice smooth and chilling, making the hairs on her neck stand up. It was all too familiar, yet twisted. Rachel's heart raced, a wild rabbit fighting for escape. Everyone turned, eyes locked. Fear and confusion flooded the room like a tidal wave. "Who are you?" she stammered, feeling the ground shift beneath her feet. She wanted to run, to disappear, but the weight of the moment anchored her. "I'm the one who's been watching and waiting." The figure stepped closer, the crowd parting instinctively, fear coursing through them. The mask slowly came off, revealing a face she never thought she'd see again. Claire, her childhood friend and confidant. Only, she looked different. Aged, worn down, but fiercely determined. "Claire, what are you doing here?" Rachel asked, her voice a fragile whisper. It was like a ghost stepping into the light, a part of her past she had buried deep. Before Claire could answer, a loud crash erupted behind her. The door burst open again, and more figures stormed in. Security, weapons drawn, eyes scanning the chaos. "Get down, everyone!" a voice shouted. In an instant, the atmosphere thickened with palpable fear. Gasps filled the air, and hoarded instincts kicked in. People scrambled. Some ducking under tables, others pushing towards the exits. "Rachel, we have to go," Max shouted, panic in his eyes, pulling her towards the back. But Rachel was frozen, caught in the whirlwind of feelings. Trust? Betrayal? Past histories? "Claire," she cried, desperation spilling into her words. "What's happening?" Her heart raced, a drum echoing in her chest. Claire's gaze darted around, urgency flooding her features. "You don't understand. I was set on a path. The accident, it was orchestrated. Your family, they're not who you think they are." The room echoed with her words, sending shockwaves through the guests. Whispers morphed into alarmed chatter. Rachel's mind spun. Her father, capable of monstrous secrets? "That's insane. Why would you say that?" "Because it's true." Claire's voice elevated, raw and peeling with emotion. "I had to learn the truth the hard way. The accident took my family. Your father, he had a hand in it." "No!" Rachel gasped, a lump forming in her throat. The pieces of her life threatened to shatter around her. Just then, a sharp shout sliced through the atmosphere, like a knife. "Claire, enough!" It was Brody, stepping toward her, eyes blazing. "You don't know what you're doing. Stop playing the hero," Claire retorted, her voice echoing into the chaos. "You're all caught in this web. The deeper you go, the more you'll learn, the more danger you'll invite." And before anyone could catch their breath, the lights flickered wildly. One by one, the beams of light snapped off, plunging the room into darkness. Panic surged again, hearts racing. "Everyone, remain calm," came a booming voice, laced with urgency. But chaos doesn't heed authority. Screams erupted, and in the chaos, a gunshot pierced the air like lightning. "Rachel!" Diego yelled, moving towards her, but it was too late. She felt a strong push, and time slowed as she was shoved away, just as another gunshot rang out. A sharp pain shot through her shoulder, searing and hot. Rachel gasped, stumbling back, eyes wide with shock. Pain blurred her vision. "Get down!" Diego shouted, drawing her close. But everything felt surreal, slow. The room spun, bodies colliding as chaos reigned. She touched her shoulder, heart racing, fingers trembling against warmth trickling down her skin. "No, not like this," she heard someone shout. And just like that, the chaos stopped. The gun fell to the floor, clattering, silence crashing upon them. Rachel's breath hitched. In that moment, everything she thought she knew unraveled, the shadows of her world exposing their secrets in brutal clarity. "Claire," she croaked, looking for answers amidst the chaos. But Claire's face was ashen, fear etched deep in her features. "Rachel, you need to know." But before she could finish, the doors burst open again, security flooding in, determined and unyielding. Rachel could barely comprehend what was happening as she clutched Diego tighter, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on her. And a flood of questions filled her mind, like a tidal wave crashing against the shore. Who were the real villains? Who was protecting who? The night wasn't over. It was just beginning. And as they all stood on the precipice of truth, the world twisted around them. leading them into a darkness none could escape. The chaos seemed to stretch on, every heartbeat louder than the last. Rachel's hand tightened around Diego's, as confusion and fear painted every face in the room. The detective's arrival had thrown them all into a panic, and Claire's words hung heavy in the air, echoing in Rachel's mind. "Your father, he had a hand in it." But before Rachel could respond, she felt the weight of several eyes boring into her, assessing, judging. It was like a spotlight swinging around the room, landing on her father, Charles, who stood frozen with a mix of fury and fright. "Everyone needs to leave, now," he barked, ignoring the chaos that surrounded him. But the crowd stayed put, eyes wide, breaths held. Rachel could feel the collective heartbeat of the room, a skittish horse caught in a storm. Suddenly, gunfire rang out again, but this time the sound was sharper. The detective yelled, diving for the floor just as another person entered the fray, an unknown officer, slamming the door shut behind him. "Keep them away from the exits," he shouted, fear threading through his voice. As Rachel ducked instinctively, Diego shielded her once more. The smell of gunpowder filled the air, burning in her nostrils. Everything felt surreal, time warped, stretching seconds into eternities. "Rachel!" Max yelled. Panic etched all over his face as he pulled at her arm. "We need to go." And that's when the world shifted. The lights flickered violently, painting faces in sharp strokes of shadow and light. Then, out of nowhere, the room began to tremble, a rumble that started low and grew, an earthquake beneath polished marble. The very foundation quaked. "What the hell is happening?" Brody gasped, his bravado crumbling. And then, with a deafening roar, the ceiling above them cracked open. Dust and debris rained down as a giant spotlight dropped from above, colliding with the floor in a catastrophic explosion of glass and metal. Rachel didn't have time to scream. All she felt was Diego's grip tightening as he pulled her away from the chaos, the world spinning in the haze of panic. "Get out!" he shouted, urgency cutting through the madness. But she couldn't move. Not yet. Am I dreaming? Everything was a furious blur. Her heart pounded against her chest. And just then, amid the cries and the confusion, a body emerged from the smoke, fully formed, striding forward, like a specter reborn from the ashes. "Stay right where you are," echoed a commanding voice, booming through the dust-laden echoes of surrender. It was another familiar face, a dark-haired woman with piercing blue eyes, who halted their breath. "Samantha!" Rachel shrieked, unable to comprehend why she was here, why now. But the weight of the moment settled heavily. In an instant, Samantha's face morphed, her expression shifting from fierce determination to something darker, something sinister. She turned towards Rachel and Diego with a twisted smile. "You thought you'd find the truth in this mess?" Samantha laughed, the sound cutting like a knife across the chaos. "The truth is deeper than you can imagine." And then, with a flick of her wrist, the air shimmered and blazed, revealing hidden figures behind her. The shadows, lurking with intentions buried in dread. "Enough!" shouted Charles, stepping forward, a fight in his eyes. But he was met with fierce defiance. "You don't know the game you're playing." Suddenly, Rachel felt an icy grip on her heart. "What game?" she breathed, eyes locked onto Samantha in horror. The world teetered on the brink of revelation, truths smashing together in a whirlwind. "Your father isn't just an innocent CEO," Samantha spat, venom dripping from her words. "He's the architect of everything. The accident, a part of the plan." Rachel's heart dropped, the air around her thickening, choking her senses. "No," she whispered, disbelief crashing into her gut. But then something else happened. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw something flicker in Diego's gaze. A glimpse of betrayal, a hidden confession ready to spill. The weight of his presence shifted, and she realized he was more than he seemed. "Diego?" she croaked, confusion pulling her apart at the seams. "What do you know?" He stepped back slightly, eyes darting like a flame caught in a windstorm. "It's not what you think." But before he could finish, another explosion rocked the room, flames licking up the walls. Rachel could only watch, horror struck, as reality twisted into something unrecognizable. Everything she thought she understood shattered into a million pieces, leaving only chaos in its wake. "Run!" Max shouted, urgency piercing through the noise as he reached for Rachel and Diego. And just like that, the world spiraled down. The familiar faces twisted into strangers. Trusts unraveled. Shadows danced with darkness, revealing a truth that would change everything. The very foundation of their lives, a tangled web worth 1,000 lies. What came next? Would they find safety? Or would the true betrayal leave them forever entangled in shadows? The chaos fell into sudden silence. A heartbeat hung in the air, slow and heavy, wrapped in breathless anticipation. Rachel stared at Samantha, her childhood friend turned adversary, who seemed to bask in the turmoil. The weight of Claire's words echoed in her mind, spiraling into fear. "Rachel, we need to move," Max urged, tugging at her sleeve. His voice sliced through the confusion, but Rachel was rooted to her spot, staring at Claire, desperate for clarity. "Claire," she shouted again, scrambling to keep her voice steady. "What do you mean it was orchestrated?" Samantha's expression morphed, her ambitious facade cracking. "It's all a setup, Rachel. Trust me." Her wide eyes burned with sincerity, or was it madness? It was hard to tell amid the tension. More figures emerged from the shadows, armed and hostile, spreading through the crowd like smoke. "Get down!" one officer shouted, his voice a sharp knife cutting through panic. The crowd scattered, a sea of confusion and terror. Then, the lights flickered, sputtering like a failing heartbeat before plunging the room into darkness once again. In that heavy silence, Rachel felt Diego's hand slip away as he moved, instinctively placing himself between her and the unknown. "Stay close," he urged, but his voice trembled. Footsteps echoed, heavy and deliberate, closing in on them. Rachel's heart raced, breaths quickened. She glanced back towards the direction of her father, Charles, who stood frozen, fear painted across his features. Suddenly, she sensed a shift, an unseen force quietly rising to claim the night. Then came the flash. A blinding light erupted in the chaos. Rachel squinted, trying to make sense of it all. In that moment, everything spiraled into a surreal tableau. She saw Diego, eyes wide, shadowed by the brilliance, and then Claire, caught mid-motion, her expression transforming from one of defiance to terror. "Move! Get out!" Claire screamed, lunging toward the widening abyss of panic. But instead, the spotlight collided with the ground, shattering the illusion of safety in one grating explosion. Cries of shock erupted, bodies diving for cover as jagged shards of glass rained down like lethal snowflakes. In the manic retreat, Rachel stumbled, flailing for something to hold on to. She spotted Diego, who was trying to reach her amidst the chaos. "Rachel," he called, stretching out his hand, but as their eyes locked, something changed, something shifted inside him. The urgency, the fight, it morphed into something darker, deeper. His features twisted, revealing a shadow she had never seen in him before. "Diego," she whispered, but the words fell away, swallowed by the noise. Something flickered in his gaze, a horrible truth ready to emerge, a betrayal nestled in his heart. And then it happened. With one quick motion, he turned away from her, shoulders squared, and charged straight for Charles. "You'll pay for this," he shouted, the words booming against the frantic backdrop of cries and chaos. The shift took everyone by surprise. Some gasped, others shouted in horror, including Rachel, who felt her heart plummet. "Stop!" she screamed, but the world spiraled away from her as Diego reached for Charles, hands accrued with rage. Brody stepped forward, trying to intervene, but it all happened too fast. A shot rang out, a single explosive crack that echoed in shockwaves around the room. It happened before Rachel could process the act, her heart thudding louder than the gunfire. "No!" Rachel screamed. This time, it was her voice that filled the space with electrifying dread. The cacophony turned into a screeching silence as everyone gasped, eyes trained on the unfolding horror. Diego dropped to the ground, clutching his side, eyes wide with shock and betrayal. Rachel felt the ground shift beneath her. It was as if the walls were caving in. "Diego!" she screamed, rushing forward, the world blurring around her. "What have you done?" But his eyes didn't reflect pain. They glinted with resolve and something darker, something she hadn't fathomed. "I had to," he coughed, blood seeping through fingers as he gasped for breath. Rachel couldn't breathe. Icons of trust shattered around her, the fragile mask of friendship crumpling into dust. Everything, every secret, every truth she'd held onto, began to unravel in a violent frenzy. Just then, Claire stepped up, her face a mask of stark realization. "You don't get it, Rachel. It's bigger than this. It was always bigger." The words reverberated through the chaos, threatening to tear apart what remained. Rachel's heart raced, confusion spiraling out of control. As Diego's grip loosened, the devastating truth of betrayal hovered in the air like an unending dark cloud. She collapsed beside him, holding the warmth of his hand, feeling his life slipping away. Would everything she thought she knew unravel in this moment? And above it all, the spectacle of chaos blazed on, with conflicting loyalties, unveiled shadows, and the weight of irreversible decisions waiting to crush them all beneath the weight of truth. Rachel's world spun into chaos, colors washing away as she knelt beside Diego, who was struggling for breath. "Help him!" Her voice choked on urgency, her heart pounding like a drum in her ears. Panic gripped her as tears brimmed in her eyes. Diego gasped, pain mixing with clarity. "Rachel, His voice wavered, fingers trembling as they slipped from her grasp. "I'm here." She pressed her hands to his wound, feeling warmth spread through her palms. The moment felt surreal. Time stretched and broke, and the chaos buzzed around them like a swarm of angry bees. "Get away from him!" Brody yelled, moving forward too quickly, eyes darting. The sound of footsteps and screams swirled into a cacophony, building and crashing like waves against the rocky shore. The detective shouted orders over the din, but the words felt distant, muffled beneath the chaos. Claire stepped between them, eyes frantic. "Rachel, focus. You have to listen. The truth, it's bigger than all of us. You'll never escape this if you don't confront it." Rachel's heart sank, but she couldn't leave Diego in pain. "What truth?" "Claire, your father, the accident. It's all connected to this moment." Claire's voice trembled, desperation lacing every word. "We're entwined in this darkness." The crowd erupted again, shifting like a living, breathing entity, drawn to the unfolding storm. It felt like everything was closing in, the world constricted around them with every second. Rachel could barely breathe. "Rachel!" Max shouted again, pulling her back, forcing her to glance at the impending whirlwind. "We need to go, now." But how could she? A part of her felt rooted there, tearing between the fear clawing at her gut and the flicker of hope she saw in Diego's eyes. "Stay with me," she whispered, squeezing his hand tighter, feeling his warmth steal against the cold reality creeping in. "Save yourself." Diego's breath hitched, fading. "Promise me. Find the truth." "No." The word burst from her lips, raw and desperate. She couldn't let him go, not like this. But the darkness wrapped around them too tightly, squeezing out moments of clarity. Then the sirens wailed, cutting through the tumult, growing louder as flashing lights burst through the ballroom shadows. The world was closing in. The figures in blue moved swiftly, her father leading them, authoritative and fierce, but fear danced in his eyes. "Stand down," Charles barked, and chaos fragmented around the authority of his voice, as if he were some kind of powerful deity flipping a switch. "Your father is a monster," Claire cried, voice shaking. "He's kept secrets. Lives were lost, and you may be next." Rachel teetered on the brink, caught in a messy web of conflicting loyalties. Just as anger surged inside her, a realization sparked. "Enough," she shouted, her voice strong amidst the commotion. "I see it now. The truth will come to light, and I won't let fear control me." The crowd halted, eyes flicking back and forth, heartbeat echoing with her declaration. Charles's expression cloudy, uncertainty betraying his usual dominance. In that moment, everything erupted. An officer lunged, grappling with Claire, but Diego's broken whisper clawed at the heart of things. "Rachel, promise." With a surge of adrenaline, she tightened her grip on Diego. "I promise." Then, pushing past the chaos, she shouted, "Everyone, help him!" As the officers rushed to assist, Rachel's heart thudded, the weight of future shadows looming over them all. Diego's eyelids fluttered. Fear gripped her. "Just hold on, please," she pleaded. The crowd surged closer, the fragile threads of tension woven tighter around them. And once again, the darkness closed in, filled with doubt and unresolved secrets, as Rachel looked around, seeking her place in this unfolding storm. But just as hope flickered, the sirens blared louder, shifting into a cacophony of impending change. This moment, this chaos, it was merely the beginning, and as Rachel clutched Diego's hand, a shiver crept up her spine. Would they escape? Or would the shadows claim them? This was nothing but the end of one story and the beginning of another, teetering on the edge of everything they once believed. Now, this is the moment to show your support. You must subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know.